Hi YouTube, today we're going to be turning all of this into this. Roll the intro. Okay, so at the heart of the system we're going to have the Ryzen 5 2600. This is a 6-core 12-thread CPU with 16 megabytes of level 3 cache. This is perfect for what we're going to be using this machine for. Next up is the RAM. This is Corsair Vengeance LPX DDR4 running at 3200 megahertz. Here we have two 8GB sticks and the cache latency, if you're interested, is 16. Okay, so the processor and the RAM will be installed into this motherboard. This is the B350 Gaming Pro from MSI. As you can see, we're going for a red and black theme here. This is a very smart motherboard and highly suitable to go in a case that has a glass side panel, which we'll come to in just a moment. Next up we have the power supply. This is just a generic 500 watt power supply from Akasa. I would have gone for something a little bit more upmarket, but this is all I had to hand at the time. And all of these components are going to be housed in this. This is the Nexus M from Tecware. As you can see, we're staying with the red and black theme, tempered glass side panel. It's a brilliant case for a budget one. I have built a PC in one of these late last year, the plain black one, and surprisingly, they are very, very good quality. Okay, so that's pretty much all the parts. Let's start assembling the machine. Okay, so first of all, we'll start by putting the processor in the socket. Now this processor, I managed to get for a good deal. It is used, but I managed to pick it up for £80. So if you compare that to the price of a new 3600, which is the series up from that, it's actually double the cost. And as we're trying to do this on a budget and keep costs down, £80 for a 6-core 12-thread CPU is absolutely amazing. Okay, next up we'll install the RAM. As I've said, Corsair Vengeance LPX, 3200 megahertz, cache latency of 16, brilliant RAM. This red version is actually quite hard to come by. The black is the more popular one, but they also do it in white as well, which is quite hard to come by. So we've got a couple of rarities here. And as I've said, this is a 350 chipset on the motherboard, which is all we need for this CPU realistically. The other thing that I didn't mention in the parts when I went through them is the SSD that we're going to install. Now we have an M2 nVMe SSD. It is a very basic Samsung model. It's nothing to shout home about, but it's still faster than using a SATA based SSD. So we've just popped that in the slot there. Get the microscopic screw and just pop that back in. Okay, so finally what we're going to do is we're going to put the heatsink on. Now, the heatsink that normally comes with this processor is the Wraith Stealth, which is this model here, and you can see there's not much aluminium to it. There is another one, a Wraith Spire I believe it's called, and it is double the depth of the aluminium. But what we're going to use is this big beauty here. Now this is what normally comes with the 8-core 16-thread variant of the Ryzen processor. The reason why I'm using this is basically just to try and keep the temperatures down even more. So this is a 65 watt TDP processor, that's the amount of heat it gives out. So the first cooler that I showed you, that's okay and handles up to 65 TDP, which is what this processor is. The one that's slightly taller will tolerate up to 95. This big beauty will actually tolerate up to 105 TDP. So obviously keep the temperatures down, keep the system happy. Let's go for the big boy. Okay, so this is a new cooler, so it does have the thermal compound already pre-applied to the bottom. That's why we're not putting any thermal paste on. What I do normally recommend is, if you do have to use thermal paste, to use Arctic MX4. That seems to be the proven one with a lot of people. There we go, both sides latched on, flip the lever over and it's in place. And then we just pop the 4-pin PWM fan control cable into the fan header on the motherboard, and we can just tuck the remainder of this cable just out the way, like so, and there we go, that's nice and neat. So that's the package complete. Let's take the side off the case and get the I/O shield installed and the motherboard. Okay, so that's starting to look pretty damn sweet. So we've got the red and black case, the red and black motherboard, and the red and black RAM, and it all works together. Even the red and black I/O shield on the back, perfect. Okay, so everything is all assembled and plugged in. I haven't cable tied everything up just yet. I just want to make sure everything's working. For the purpose of this build and due to the current market for graphics cards, we are using just this, just to test the machine and make sure everything's working and to install Windows at a later date. A better graphics card will be installed once the prices settle and so on and so forth. So, without further ado, everything is on. Let's hit the power button, fingers crossed. And spam the old delete key. Okay, so it's a few days after that little hiccup, and the reason why it didn't work was the motherboard was still on the first revision. The motherboard actually came out about 9 months before the processor, so there was no support for the processor. And the way I figured that out was, if you have a look at the box, there's normally a badge down here that says compatible with 2000 series or 2nd gen Ryzen, nothing on the box. So if you compare that to this 550, here you can see it's compatible with 3rd gen. So unfortunately, I did not have a 1st series Ryzen or an AMD A8 Athlon, whatever they're called, to actually update the BIOS. So I took it over to another YouTuber who's not too far from me, who actually owns a shop as well. And he kindly did the BIOS update for me. So the guy in question, that's Graham, and he runs a channel called Adamant IT. He also runs a store as well. So if you want to check him out, follow him on YouTube. Details are in the description below. Also the contact for his shop as well. If you do live in the Dorset area, I highly recommend that you go and see him because he's very knowledgeable and yeah, he's just great. Anyway, back to the PC. As we can see, it's all set up, all working. I've even found a wallpaper that matches the motherboard, so that's great. Also, I've installed the Cooler Master Wraith Prism software, and I've programmed the CPU cooler just to stay with a red and white theme, which goes quite nice with the case, of course, because we're going for a red and black theme with the rest of the system. So that's all working. So let's just dive in and have a look at some of the specs. Okay, so here you can see that we're running the AMD Ryzen 5 2600, as I've said. It runs at a TDP of 65 watts, which I've also mentioned. All the instructions here that this processor supports, so it will run pretty much anything happily, no problems. Also, the 16 megabytes of cache, that is split 2 ways, as we can see here. And as I've previously mentioned, 6 cores, 12 threads on the processor. Coming over to the motherboard, MSI B350M Gaming Pro. It supports PCI Express 3.0, so that is for the M2 SSD slot and also the 16 times PCIe graphics slot. Here we can see that we're now on the latest version of the BIOS. The previous one was, I think it was January 2017. And we'll just have a quick look at the memory. As we can see, memory, 16 gigabytes of DDR4. On-core frequency, which is basically single data rate, we're running at 1600 megahertz essentially. So if you double that up, That's 3200 megahertz as it should be. Corsair memory using Samsung memory chiplets actually on the memory sticks. Running XMP 2.0 mode, and that's slot 1, and slot 2 is practically identical. Okay then guys, so that's pretty much it for the moment. We can't really do any benchmarks as such because we don't have a graphics card in that will support gaming properly. This is very similar to one that I built last year, which I will put a link up there somewhere. You can click on that and go and check that one out if you want. As usual, all the parts that I've used to build this machine are available on Amazon. I'll provide links in the description below if you wish to purchase any of those, and in doing so, they give me a very small kickback as they are affiliate links, and it does help me get more stuff in to review and build or do other sorts of things on the channel. So as usual, thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know.